Hey everyone, and welcome to today's video. We are going to do a tier list based on the dev stream we just had a few days ago, where we'll take a look at all the new changes that's been made and try to rank all the decks based on that. And today I'm joined by Crozyr, KingChezz, and MissLadyJay. Hey guys.
How's it going?
Hello.
It's an absolute pleasure having you here today.
It's an honor to be here.
So to start off with, we saw some buffs to weather for monsters, and we have the ancient foglet to start off with. So guys, do you think that any sort of decks, including the ancient foglet, will be relevant in any way?
No. Yeah, I wanted to let KingChezz go first on this one.
Big fat no.
So what exactly are we looking at right here, right? We have the ancient foglet that buffs itself for each instance of weather on the, is it opposite row or opposite side of the board, actually?
On the opposite side.
Okay.
Of the row effects on the opposite side.
Yeah, and then the foglet that can spawn weather, so the idea would be to go for like an all-in weather deck, or at least have a massive weather package in this new type of deck.
Yeah.
I think people are definitely going to experiment with it, because it's basically a new card, right, that's added with this patch. And I wouldn't be so like Omega sure it has to be D tier horrible. I'm also slightly doubtful it's gonna be amazing, because weather is just such an unreliable mechanic to get value from. But I guess I'm kind of the eternal optimist, and I want to believe in a world where the foglet weather deck can be C tier. But
I on this one, I'm happy to die on my sword and say D tier. Let's move on. This deck sucks. I mean, it's not even a deck. Yeah.
Okay, so we have one vote for C tier, one vote for D tier. Yes.
I would also put a D tier. I don't see
Wow.
this.
Yes, betraying Crozyr. I can't believe it.
dagger in my ribs.
Yeah, I'm afraid I will also have to go with KingChezz and Jess on this one. I think I'm also going to vote for D tier Crozyr. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think it's a pretty cool combo, and I think maybe with more support, like we could potentially see this being stronger. But right now, I just don't see it being particularly great. Then next up, we got a Ruckus Swarm, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think a Ruckus Swarm saw any major changes this patch, as far as we're aware.
No, I don't.
As far as I know, it remains untouched, right?
Yeah, when I heard all the changes, I didn't think of anything for AQ.
Yeah, and previously, at least right now, I think most people considering it to be a very strong deck. Maybe not. I mean, probably around S tier or A tier, in my opinion. Depends a bit on the meta and stuff, and Monster's obviously one of the most versatile factions, having both Kelly, a Ruckus Swarm, and Vi as playable decks. So, where do you think we should put this?
So, if you don't mind, I'll go first on this one, and I think I've got it in like it is right now, like somewhere between A and S. I think it's just pretty versatile. It doesn't have too many awful matchups in the meta right now. Like ST's like its bad matchup, right? But like ST's pretty weak, so that's very good for it. It's unironically pretty bad against Vi, depending on the variant, but a lot of people are starting to cut Yrden, which makes it even worse for AQ with double Forktail and stuff. But again, not very popular. And then everything else is pretty good into. Skellige's probably its worst top faction, and that's got more and more popular, which has made AQ come down a little bit lately. But other than that, I think it should like, I don't see why anything would change next patch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what we have to take into consideration is that some of the top tier decks right now might fall off in popularity, and depending on what comes in to replace those, a Ruckus Queen might lose some bad matchups, right? So, for example, I'm not sure. We'll discuss this later probably, but how much the Ice deck suffers from the Bloodthirst 3, if that was to reduce its popularity, then that could also help a Ruckus and make it even more reliable. I guess the other decks that are disappearing are Syndicate, maybe, and I guess Ball was not really a bad matchup for Ruckus, so that is not that big of a deal if it goes away. But
yes, I think
actually losing two of its good matchups, right? But also maybe losing one bad. So
I think you raise a good point here, Crozyr, that Skellige is going to get nerfed, but I think the Skellige nerf is lesser than the nerf to the other top tier decks. Syndicate is getting a nerf to Cleaver and the Halflings, and Nilfgaard is basically losing their ball.
And I want to add one more thing here, and that is that the Reckless Flurry change, where there's 3 charges now, 3 pings each. Might also, if there ends up being a deck like that that's popular with Reckless Flurry, that could be like the arch nemesis of Ruckus.
For sure.
So where should we put this?
I haven't gone through this discussion. I'm okay with A. I think it's still good.
Okay. I mean that's put an A now for them. Then we got Syndicate, Line Pockets, and Line Pockets, as mentioned before, got 2 big nerfs, I believe. Cleaver lost its armor, which in terms of raw power doesn't make a difference, but it means that you can now kill it a lot easier with normal kill cards like Rebuke, Boiling Oil, or sometimes if you manage to stop the pocket, you can maybe still kill it with a Parasite.
And Longship from Skellige.
Yes, so it's actually that's also a good point, right? That you can, if you play it and the opponent has a ship on the wall already, it will actually just die right away. So it actually also changes some interactions. So, do you guys think this nerf will hurt the deck a lot, or will it still be kind of okay? Because right now it's arguably the best deck in the game.
So what's the change to Safecrackers before I make this answer?
Lost Intimidate.
Lost Intimidate, but gained 1 base power.
Okay.
So Cleaver can also just die to a Parasite now.
And the Safecrackers are, I guess, Venendal Elites or Riot Vanguards, but they might have a better card to base their power on with crimes, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. They lose so much power, right? Ideally, if you end up playing all the crimes in almost all of them in the round that you play the Safecracker, it buffs twice for each crime, and that's it loses half of the synergy value. And that's huge. So I'm not sure if there's a good card to replace the Safecracker with to achieve similar value. On the other hand, there's Horson Jr., who's better in Devotion now. I could see people trying to maybe come up with some Devotion variant that looks a bit different. But if that doesn't go well, I do see it fall off quite a bit.
I haven't thought about it. I think the Safecracker nerf's arguably the bigger one. Because they need that a lot of the time to abuse people, right? Especially in round 1, and therefore I think it's gonna be a lot worse. Maybe C tier, something like that.
That's what I was thinking. It's harsh, but I mean,
it's the whole playstyle of the deck's gonna get it's not gonna be able to do what it does, right? Against SK, you need to abuse them on red, that's what you do, and against a lot of decks, really, that's kind of what you want to do. And if you can't do that anymore, it's
and I believe when Inferns and Gorflo was doing this tier prediction in the beginning of the patch where Clear was added, they actually gave him C tier. So maybe they were just ahead of the meta, right?
Exactly. And
I do tend to agree that, also, when you look at it from the Skellige perspective, one of the ways you lose to Syndicate is if you, they beat you round 2 and you don't have your Morgvark to punish the Cleaver. Now you can kill him in other ways as well. Yeah. So it's just losing a lot of power, and I think it's being a lot more vulnerable, and it's probably not completely unfair to put it down to C tier. That being said, as you guys also touched upon, maybe we could see some other Syndicate decks being stronger, potentially with Horson. Maybe we could see Hidden Cash coming back. And also I think the Tribute deck was also not bad before Cleaver was added. So I don't think necessarily Syndicate will be tier C, but maybe this particular deck will be around that.
Right. Agreed.
Then we got Krach. And Krach, I don't think I've ever really queued into it on ladder, to be fair. But it did get a buff this patch, and now instead of just I can't even remember exactly what it was doing. It's giving some armor to some pirates, I believe. But now
it's damage. The thing that was added is that it damages a unit by 1 and its cooldown 2.
Yeah,
Right.
its
Oh,
original
that's so good.
ability is that it gives armor to 2 or 3 units in hand. They got to be
2
boats or
armor to
pirates.
3 pirates or ships, yeah.
Yeah, and then when you play a ship next to crack, they fight
Or
the
pirates.
lowest unit.
Right.
Oh.
But it's actually rather interesting that you now have the ability to also play as an engine. Obviously, like the hunter value from it, as you mentioned, Chess, is maybe it's not that great, but like it still adds up over a long round, right? And for Skellige, having these pings can be quite valuable.
Yeah, it's also damage units. You can hit your own side if that's ever relevant in Skellige. It can be, I'd argue, but
Yeah.
maybe not in the
So-
pirate deck right now. I guess on this boat that if it dies, it like pops out a pirate from the grave, even though that wasn't played either.
I mean, then it can also help the ice.
Can also proc your Ceres.
Oh, new deck.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
I'd say D tier.
Oh wow, D tier. I mean, okay, that's interesting. What, Jess? What do you think?
Jess or Chezz?
Yes.
I do not see this getting played at all. Maybe like meme decks, or maybe people want to experiment with this, and maybe Lippy, and maybe to help Iced. But yeah, I still don't think it's
You
gonna.
don't sound very hopeful.
No.
Chess. More hope from you?
What do you think, Saber?
Like, I was kind of leaning towards maybe a C tier, but I feel like I'm
Really?
kind of alone on this one. Like,
yeah,
okay.
you're definitely alone.
Like,
on
if
this.
you think about this card and just play it like in some sort of like Warriors deck, where you put this card in and then like you have a
Yeah,
hunter
but
on
then
this deck,
at that
and
point,
then
it's not
I mean,
crack
just to,
deck, right?
I mean, maybe you run like a few more ships, right? Just to have some support from this. Like,
I think
So
what
I will say
the
is
10
this card is
provision. I think it's because the 10 provision. Otherwise, you're gonna like take out what either totem or
yeah,
Mortfog or.
what I will say is I think this card is definitely closer to being playable. However, a deck that revolves around crack will be D tier.
okay, let's put it in D tier. But we should put
And
it
the
up,
other problem is that like even if it is closer to being playable, right, it doesn't have the warrior tag, and you kind of need the warrior tag to be played, right? It's only the Morkvag that isn't, and people are
to be
upset
fair,
about having to play Morkvag.
if you
Right?
gave this card the Warrior tag, it would probably be very decent in Warriors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
But that's how it goes with most Skellige cards, right? Slam a Warrior tag on the card and it's very good.
It's like the only tag that's worth something.
But we can place it above the Ancient Foglet, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
I
I
mean,
agree with that.
personally,
Just to
I would
satisfy Saber.
switch that around. But I mean, my last experience with Pirates when I played it, I think the most recent patch or the patch before was I think I dropped 70 MMR, and I think now with this ability I might only drop 50 MMR before. I lose.
Oh.
I'm looking forward to Crozyr slamming a bunch of Ancient Foglet games and dropping 200 MMR.
Maybe they will
No.
find. Maybe he will find your Syndicate MMR then.
Yeah.
Moving on. Then we got Deathlaf and monsters with vampires. So they got 2 buffs this patch. First of all, then Deathlaf is getting 1 more Blood Moon for each adjacent vampire, I believe.
Oof.
And the other one is to Unseen Elder, which is getting buffed from 5 to 6 strengths. Now,
Yes.
these 2 cards, at least Deathlaf was already really good. So getting this additional Blood Moon, like this just makes this card a lot better. It's basically just like another Crimson Curse you get into your deck with some other upsides. For the Unseen Elder, it was kinda weak, but only because it was so easy to remove with 5 damage. Getting it to 6 strength, I think that makes a pretty big difference because now quite often the opponent will be forced to use some sort of troll removal to deal with it. And in vampires, you have quite a lot of big units. So guys, what do you think? Is this gonna be good, or is it still just a kind of a C tier deck?
I haven't seen much of Deathlaf or Unseen Elder in the first place, so maybe we see more of it.
Maybe more of it.
Maybe.
Bold
Maybe.
prediction, Jess.
So I know initially I said I'm the eternal optimist. I think when it comes to vampires, I'm the eternal doubter. Even last time when all these like big changes hit the vampire deck, basically the rework, right? I was like, yeah, I don't know. It's like it relies so much on the opponent playing into you with units that you can benefit bleed value from, and like anything that's remotely no unit is, I don't know, really tough to beat. It's maybe at the point where these core cards are buffed so hard that they just have a chance of winning even if they don't get even remotely optimal value from the abilities, and then maybe it's like playable. I would put it in C tier, but maybe they've finally cracked the sound barrier and made it into the playable range.
What I actually think, right, is that first of all, like they saw a bit of play at the start of the season. People were trying to make, and it seemed like Unseen Elder was kind of stronger. Like at least the problem with Unseen Elder, right, is you have to run him in Devotion, which is the drawback, right? But when you actually get his Devotion ability, he's pretty good. And people were even using him with Caranthea and stuff. But the problem is like the whole vampire archetype's way too all in, and like Crozyr said, it's like you kind of need perfect conditions to get good value, right? Having said that, these two cards were already very, very good cards, and they're just buffing them. At some point, these cards are going to become so good you just run them in any deck because they're just that good. Like Detlef now is probably like you could just jam him in any monster deck, and even if he has no synergies, like it's like playing Crimson Curse only better, right? And Crimson Curse is already super good. So
I mean, you could run him with Foglet, and you could have Crimson Curse, and then in the Crimson Curse Ekimara pocket, you put the Detlef, and then you slam those Foglets. But
sorry for interrupting. You could run him in Vi.
No, so the problem in Vi, right, is he's not going to play as much as a tutor, so it's kind of pointless.
But you said any monster deck.
Yeah, the problem with Vi, right, is that it's not an actual normal deck, right? It doesn't follow the social constructs of building decks. So yeah,
I see.
But I mean, like I said, these two cards again, like if you keep buffing them, eventually they just become so good you don't even need to run them in vampires, right? Like they're already extremely good cards. However, I think vampires as an archetype is still going to be ass. So I mean,
based on this discussion, I'm sensing that we are like somewhere below low B, high C tier. Is that correct?
I would say closer to C, to D, but whatever.
Okay, so I'm a little bit optimistic here on my vampires.
I'm also leaning towards C, but less than Cleaver.
Okay, so something like this, maybe.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Then we got Iced. And Ice got a small nerf. Ice now requires Bloodthirst 3 to get his condition off instead of Bloodthirst 2. But you can, of course, still always use him just directly with leader with no Bloodthirst set up anyway. And in round 3, it will still be worth 17 points. Obviously, with the condition that you run Utah and you use your leader and stuff like that. But still, 17 points. Is this change gonna hurt Iced a lot, or is it just gonna be whatever?
So I'm under the impression it's not going to hurt him too much. So it's going to hurt him in certain scenarios quite a lot, right? Like, but at the same time, how many times have you drawn a gut and slash off of Iced?
Too many.
Yeah, exactly. And like even when that happens, a lot of the time you still win, right? It's probably more impactful in like medium to long range sort of thing. But often, like if you get to a short round with Iced, you're winning just off the fact it's Iced and you don't get the Bloodthirst anyway. So, kind of like I don't think it's going to be super impactful, but obviously it will have an impact in an X amount of games, right? Because you are losing like 8 points, 7 points quite often, which can have an impact. The funny thing is that the biggest change in Skellige is the change to the leader, right? And if you change leader, do you even run Iced at that point? Because like that other leader looks really scary. Like it's actually pretty decent, I think.
So the leader you're referring to, I can't actually remember the name of it. I'm sure Crozyr can help me out.
Reckless McFlurry.
Yeah, right. So that now deals 3 times 3 damage instead of dealing 8 damage once. So not only does it deal 1 additional damage, but you can also separate your charges into like 3
and
different.
We've already seen how strong modular leaders are, right? Like Morvan dominated for quite a while because it was modular, which is really, really nice.
And fun fact, those pings even go through armor.
Yes,
yeah.
Which is something I completely forgot about with Reckless Fury when I queued into it with my shield wall deck, and he murdered my defender because it pinged the shield off and then just murdered it through 2 armor. I was like, what?
So now it's a larvae killer.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's like actually pretty good for stuff like that. I could definitely see that being the new Skellige leader. If that's the case, though, Iced won't be played, right? So it's going to have to be pretty good to become the new Skellige leader, because Iced is pretty still broken, right?
So what I would say is that right now, according to like Pro-Rata stats, there are two factions that have significantly higher win rate than all others, and that's Syndicate and Skellige. They are almost the same. Skellige is actually like slightly higher the last time I checked in top 500, but it's very close. And I think that we could actually see Skellige being the strongest deck next patch, simply because that we're seeing, like, even though it's getting a nerf, I just think the other decks are getting bigger nerfs. So the nerf to Syndicate, for instance, is way bigger in my opinion. And the nerf to Nilfgaard, which we'll also discuss a little bit later, is also pretty massive. So I could actually see Ice in S tier. But obviously, if that happens, then you will see other decks taking advantage of that, because obviously the downside of Ice is that it's devotion, and that means that decks like Vi will start rising, and I'm sure Chess won't be too upset about that if that should happen.
Yeah, and like, so whilst I agree, and I have seen the stats that that SK is very good, especially in top 500, it does have the issue of that. I don't think in like maybe like top 16, top 64 sort of thing, it's quite as good as those stats suggest, simply because it's like slightly easy to play, right? So it gets very high win rate for things like that. But I do agree that it's a lot stronger than people thought it was going to be, and like you pointed out, like a lot of the other top decks are getting bigger nerfs than it. Also, AQ's the other deck that isn't getting nerfed, and like it's good into AQ, right? That's one of its good matchups. So I could see it being very high up for sure. Like I would go with probably still A, because I think it's going to have the issue that other, like a lot of these decks that are getting buffs and stuff are probably going to be good into it again. But I wouldn't be against you putting it in S tier for sure.
Okay, I think I'm gonna vote for S. So Jess and Crozyr, what do you think?
I wanted to ask, wouldn't it be good now against Nilfgaard because of the ball nerf? Like better against Nilfgaard, I mean.
So it was generally considered to be slightly favoured into Nilfgaard already. Now, being better into Nilfgaard, I mean, it'll be better into ball, but it's what's Nilfgaard going to be playing this season, this patch, right?
That's the big question.
I mean, I know what it's going to be.
I know what I'm going to be.
Oh no, guys.
Can I say this on camera? We'll get to that later.
But yeah, we need to place this ice somewhere.
So I think if we just use the ice here to symbolize Skellige, I could definitely see it in S tier. If we actually refer to Iced himself, or the ice deck as we know it, more or less unchanged, I could see it in A tier rather, because I think it's just not going to be as popular, because the Reckless Flurry deck, I think, has more promise, and it might end up just falling flat. Also, some of the other decks that I suspect that might come through here with V and maybe even Commandos, but we'll talk about that later. If they are becoming more prominent, then I would kind of think that Ice should not be ST anymore.
So how about we call this Iced/Reckless Flurry and put it S tier?
Yeah.
No. We put it A tier.
No, we need an S tier deck, Jess. It's good content.
We'll get one. It's coming. It's coming. Three from last.
No.
Second from last, you mean?
Okay, no second from last.
No, last.
If it's just Reckless Flurry / Iced, S tier all the way.
Perfect.
Okay.
End of discussion. Next. Ithna. So I don't think Nature's Gift is getting any changes this patch, as far as we're aware. But it is a deck that didn't see much play on ladder, but still it was quite a popular tournament deck. I believe Patch brought it to the latest Open, where he finished second, and I believe other players have been playing in qualifiers as well. Do you think that this deck could rise in popularity in combination with the nerfs to 3 of the most popular meta decks in Iced, and Ball and Syndicate.
So the biggest problem with Gift, right, is that Syndicate is just auto loss. You just go next, like it's about as bad as you can get. So that's good that Syndicate's going down. However, it's also 2 of its very good matchups, Iced and Ball, right? Now, we're pretty sure some form of Skellige is going to be good, so that's still good for it. But Ball is going to be dead. Ball is dead. Dead.
So one interesting thing to see here is that, like, right now, if you're arguing that Swarm and Ice are 2 of the best decks, then that should automatically make Nature's Gift pretty good, because Gift is good into both of these 2 decks, right?
It's not good into Swarm, I don't think.
Yeah, that's not good. Because of the Yurden.
Yeah, it's generally considered kind of like, I think, Swarm's favored.
Yeah.
I don't think I quite agree with you guys on that. You have a card like Gestra as well, and you quite easily win one and go for a bleed, which can be very scary for for AQ. It's not a completely like polarized
and
match.
Padge played it, right, and they both lost to Tailbot's AQ, I'm pretty sure.
Tailbot's AQ was also different, right? He was running triple Toll Punish.
Yeah.
Does it depend on the Gift deck if you're running Puffco or not?
And yeah,
we will run Puffco. But
Puffco can also have a pretty big impact, yeah. Like, I'm not saying that Gift is necessarily like auto win against AQ. I think that would be unfair, but I think it's like, depending on the versions, it's at least a pretty close matchup.
I don't think Gift's going to be very good, is the point I'm trying to make here. I think it's still going to be a pretty average ladder deck. Like, it might see some play, but I don't think it's going to be particularly good. Like, you can put it in B tier. It's probably better than them. Better than the bottom 4, but it's not particularly good.
Yeah, I would also... Sorry, Jessica.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's good against Ball. Now we think that Ball is going to be bad. And so now that one of its good matchups is now down at the bottom.
So, are we talking about Devotion or non-Devotion?
Devotion.
I think Devotion has been the most popular one, at least. Like, obviously, you could make adjustments, but...
The other problem it has is it's bad into Vi and Kelly, right?
But then again, like Syndicate, it was tough, but now Syndicate's...
Yeah, Syndicate going is obviously good for it. I do agree. Yeah. That'll make it better on ladder for sure. Like I said, I think it's better than the bottom 4, but I don't think it's going to be as good as any of the A tier decks we're going to put in. So I would put it at B. B seems just the obvious choice to me. But...
Yeah, B maybe it could end up being C, but I would agree with B. Fine.
Yes, I also good with that.
Yep.
All right, let's put it in B. Then we got Eldain. And again, I don't think Eldain saw that many changes. So it's more about like if the matchup spread for that deck changed. I haven't played much traps myself, so I can't really say I'm an expert on it. But maybe some of you guys have more insight.
So, so the funny thing with traps is that it's not seen much play it saw a bit of play at the start and then fell off. But right now, it's actually the deck that's like performing best at high levels. Like Chase got like 2660, although he was running just control, I think. But I know Gravesh is playing this, and it's by far his best performing faction. And he's got like a 70% win rate over all factions. But ST, he's like just completely smurfing with some sort of trap variant. And I know there's a few other people have tried to pick it up now. It's a little late in the season, so a lot of people, it's too late for them to pick it up because it wasn't one of their top 4. But those that have got it in their top 4, it's doing really, really well for them. Part of that is probably because Skellige's become a lot more popular, right? Like that's actually seen a rise in popularity. So it goes to reason that traps would become better into that. Obviously, AQ's are super strong as well, and it's good into that. So I think people were kind of sleeping on traps, although it does have some weaknesses. Like it is obviously kind of not great against something like AQ, right? Not AQ, line pockets. But again, that dropping 8's probably good for it. I could definitely see Eldain being 80 next season. Honestly, like depending on the meta, it could be BSD.
What do you think, Crozyr? Why? I also agree with that.
Well, I think A and S tier is taken a bit too far. It is, after all, a bit of a gimmicky deck. I think I agree that it's not going to be bad next season if the decks that we expect to be played are going to end up being played, because you mentioned some of the good matchups. In general, it likes decks that either go wide, like Ruckus, where they can punish them really easily with some of the traps they have with Crushing Trap, etc., or where you play no units against a lot of removal. Against Skellige, you can really outplay them super easily if you win the first round. And those are the decks that we expect, right? So I expect with your reasoning, I do think in general it does have a few flaws that can make it fall flat. If just a few decks are out there that are 2 point slammy that you can't like trick with your traps enough. I guess actually Nilfgaard was one of the toughest matchups. If that goes away, maybe A tier. Okay, maybe A tier. I think it's B tier, but maybe
most of its bad matchups are dropping.
Yeah, and Skellige is rising. So.
And it's also very good into Kelly, which could like I don't know how popular Kelly is going to be, but it's also very good into that. If Commandos is popular, it's pretty good into that. Having played Commandos myself way more than I should have this season.
You can even win against V actually, because you have like Serpent Traps, and you can go for
so people were saying it's favored into V. I've found that seems to be false, because they have to commit these cards round 1 to win round 1, right? And that's super
the Forge version was playing really well.
So it depends on what version you play. Yeah, I think usually what you end up doing is you kill a lot of the consumes, and then they just like they never get the huge Vs. And even if they do, like in round 1, you can pressure them super hard by like killing most of the consumes. They might end up with a Slizzard, and you play a Serpent Trap, and they can never tutor anything anymore, because then the Slizzard just
I mean, it's definitely winnable for traps.
All right, so to wrap up on Eldain, what are you guys saying? A tier?
I think A tier, really. Yeah, I could see it being S tier, but I think it's A tier.
I mean, I'm a no connoisseur, but oh god, I guess A tier. I feel like if people learn how to play around it properly, it's not going to be A tier. But
I mean, I tend to agree with Crozyr here that like it should never be higher than A tier. I think S tier is really pushing it. And I would probably have said B tier before we had this conversation. Yeah. But I mean, if Chess is arguing S and Jess is saying A, and then Crozyr and I are like B-A-ish, then I mean we can put it in A, right? That doesn't seem too unfair. Then moving on, we have Kelly.
My favorite.
Is that sarcastic, Jess?
No.
It is your favorite.
It's one of my favorites.
Okay, I mean, then go ahead. Where is Kelly going to be next season?
I mean, so if Syndicate's also dropping, that's going to help it too, because Drill was pesky, and so was Philippa. She was also pesky, and the boat was pesky. But now the traps and Ruckus, but it was good against Skellige. It was really good against Skellige. Like, sometimes they would have to force their leader round 1 to get rid of your Siri and all of that. But I still see it as a good deck for next season. I'm definitely going to play Kelly for my monsters.
Right. And Crozyr?
I don't think there was any changes for Kelly, though.
Has Dash not been touched yet?
No.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, how is that card still a thing?
If Skellige goes Reckless Flurry, non-devotion, I think that's not gonna be good for Kelly at all.
I find it very hard to believe that Skellige will play non-devotion. Like, it's the one faction that it's just got absolutely busted devotion cards. Like, Harold is still so good, right?
I mean, unless you're playing like witches.
Yeah, possibly. Like, I mean, it's possible. It is possible you could do it for sure. It would just not be a warrior deck. Right? It would be a non-warrior deck.
I mean, yeah, Kelly was pretty good this season. At some point I started struggling a bit with it, but I can see it still performing just as well as before. And probably better with Syndicate being gone. That was an annoying matchup. That's true. I actually put it on A tier here for myself. I can see it perform well, and kind of just remain where it used to be.
I would put it between Ruckus and traps.
I think Kelly is the perpetual A tier deck, right? It's been A tier for a long, long time, and the reason buffs or nerfs is because it doesn't see a particularly high play rate.
That being said, traps are tough for Kelly.
Yes.
I mean, so sorry for interrupting. Like right now, looking at the top decks we have, then I mean, this Iced Skellige is a very good matchup. A Ruckus Swarm is a very good matchup because you have double Fogtail. I could see traps being tricky for sure, but then you have Gifted B tier, which is also a very good matchup. Now, obviously, we aren't done putting all the decks into the tier list, but I think it's hard to argue that Kelly would be anything less than A tier. I also think S tier would probably be pushing it, because again, it's the sort of deck that forces the meta to adapt if it becomes very popular.
Yeah.
But I think A tier is absolutely reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's definitely at least A tier for sure.
All right. Then we got Foltest, and this deck actually saw a big change, right? Because now we are going to, first of all, then the commando ability is going to change. So instead of boosting a unit by 1, you're now boosting by 2 and giving seal. So not only is the deck getting 3 more points, you're also getting more value on your duels, such as Prince and Sace and Selkirk. But you're also seeing a change to the card Foltest itself. It's losing 1 power and getting 1 provision, but now it's also working as a drummer. Now, obviously, being an engine itself is good, but it's also activating its ability, which just means that you don't need to have some sort of other boost on the board to activate it. So, pretty massive buffs to a deck that didn't really see any play last season. Will this be enough to make it...
I beg to differ on no play last season. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Millions upon millions of people in the kingdom of Chezz saw Commandos played.
Outside of KingChezz, it saw very little play last season. Will it see more play this season?
Yes, it's the simple answer to that question.
Okay.
Well, just for commandos, then yeah, because wasn't Inspired Zealed also buff?
Yeah, buffs by 2 now with each charge.
But
You guys
how much better is it, though?
Okay, I'll let you guys all talk about it, and then I'll come in at the end.
I think it's definitely much better than before.
Yes.
And I think it was definitely too weak last season or current season, but I think with this, and I mean, what was it really bad against? I played it so long ago, so I can't really produce the proper matchups right now. But like in terms of what's like the arch nemesis matchup that you just can't win against at all? Did that change at all with the
Syndicate? Was probably pretty bad for it.
Yeah, that's what I figured. And I can imagine Nilfgaard might have been.
Nilfgaard was
like. So
like
I think
use them on red, it was okay, but outside of that, it was bad. Like you always lose a long range ball, right? Stuff. So
they can like bully your grave, and I don't know.
I think the thing with Foltest is it's kind of hard to kind of like talk about the matchups because most of us, don't really have that much experience. Because I mean, Chezz has played it, but it was so much weaker last season that even the matchups that were supposed to be good, they ended up being kind of bad. So yeah, like looking like on paper, I think it actually has decent matchup into a lot of decks because you have like double duel, you go very wide, like play around Toll Punish. Obviously, the deck can suffer a bit to draw sometimes. So like being inconsistent could be its biggest weakness, and it might be tricky to build like the perfect Foltest deck. But I do agree with you guys. It definitely got big potential.
Just play the new Cursed Scroll where you can always get the one kind.
With this Foltest deck, right, is there's going to be multiple ways of building it. There's obviously going to be a Draug, and it's going to be very meta dependent on what type of version you want to run. Now, if you're running the actual Foltest card itself, that does that takes up the slot that Draug normally took up, right, or Renew normally took up, or whatever, right. So you're going to have to mess around with how you build it, and its biggest problem is consistency, right? So if you want to run this with Draug, you're probably going to have to cut some sort of consistency to fit it, and then it's going to be pretty awkward. So I don't think this deck's going to... I would love to see it be A or S tier, but I don't think it's just not... doesn't have the ability to be both consistent and powerful, like full power at the same time. It's just not quite there. It's way too combo heavy, I think, which makes me think it'll probably be B, but I mean, I'm definitely going to try out some different commando decks next season. See what I can come up with.
Yeah. Crozyr and Jess, do you agree with a B tier rating?
Yeah, I'd say so too.
All right. Now we got
Oh.
Lippy, Jess's
My
favorite. How good is this gonna be?
Just put S tier. That just no.
S
no
tier
discussion.
next. All right, easy.
Yep, there we go.
No, but like jokes aside, like how do you think this is gonna be next patch?
So a lot of people are saying that they want to put the new Coral in because
Mhm.
I think she was changed. So that's gonna help because I think she damages for any card discarded, not just the special.
And Mask of Ouroboros change as well.
She also got buffed to 6 strength, right?
Yes.
So she's way harder to kill.
So I'm definitely gonna mess around with her in my Lippy deck because I play that every season. Always get 2.5k with that. I think the matchup I struggled with was Syndicate. It was like close, especially if you were on blue coin. So I struggled with that because also Philippa taking the Ceres, so that was annoying. With Kelly, that's a very good matchup. Ruckus, I struggled with. Ruckus was very difficult to play against. Against Ice, that was kind of tricky, but I would need red coin and win on even for that to secure a win for Lippy. And also, you need to not brick.
You do also bully traps pretty hard, usually.
Yes, it bully traps a lot.
So, are we talking like B tier here, or?
Put that A tier. Put it there. Put it next to Kelly.
No.
A tier.
No. This deck is.
No one believes in my Kelly.
This deck is borderline D tier.
Wow.
Excuse me.
I think it's C tier. Like Coral's going to be nice and like other things, but realistically,
I would at least put a B tier.
It's not a B tier deck. It's definitely worse than Gift and Full Test.
Crozyr, you're gonna decide. Are you gonna back Chess or your girlfriend?
She did screw you over at the start of this. Just saying.
See, the thing is, I don't think Lippy is as bad as you, Chess. I think it's also getting a pretty decent buff with Coral, and the Mask of Ouroboros is also rather sexy. I think B tier at least.
But the problem is, Mask of Ouroboros does nothing for Lippy because you have it on blue coin and you lose if you get blue coin. So you.
This is where you're being pessimistic.
On blue coin, you get an extra mulligan.
Yeah, and you still lose because you can't win on even.
No, you just push on too, man, and then you can win a card down 20 points slam.
Maybe 8 tier is too optimistic.
Everything else got these huge finishes. Like, how do you beat Iced in a short round if you're not like if you're on blue coin?
Just red coin, of course.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's okay on red coin if you could.
Against Ice. Now the other decks that I just mentioned, like Kelly and Traps, and now Syndicate.
I just don't see it. I really don't. I'm sorry.
For the sake of the length of this video, I'm going to make an executive decision and put it B tier. So
Thank you.
I just want to know what you think, Saber.
What I think that this is a democracy, and I'm just asking you guys.
Because I'm almost certain you think it's C.
I'm not gonna get into that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to be a good host here. Then we got Ball.
Oh yeah, DTX.
And in case you don't know what happened to Ball, then there was like a very, very minor nerf, at least when you look at it first, and that is that now it only triggers when you play loyal units, loyal aristocrats.
Yes.
And obviously, the two ways you usually triggered your Ball was together with Joachim and Roderick. So the current Chinese Meta Breaker deck that has been terrorizing ladder for the past few months, or weeks at least, it cannot be played because you only have one way of triggering Ball, and that's your usurper.
And that's only rank 3.
And that's only rank 3. So good luck getting played with Ball in hand.
Oh, if you play Hunters, then yes.
Yeah, okay. So basically there are like two options, right? Like either people will cut Ball from the current deck and play like 2 other high-end cards, or people will start playing more aristocrats, bronze aristocrats in the deck, like Van Mortem Hunters, maybe Dames, to be able to trigger the Ball.
I mean, there's not just bronze aristocrats, it's also like Damien and I'm not Damien.
Damien,
Vincent, and Fergus.
So I think that the issue is, of course, many of the loyal gold aristocrats are kind of gimmicky. We're looking at things like Kahir or
Emir.
Diffrin or Emir Vam Enrise, Vatier de Redeux. Like, you have a lot of really memey cards that will definitely not be in a meta deck. Maybe Vincent is like a little exception. I actually played against Vincent decks twice today in like the higher to 550 MMR range, but I still doubt it. What I do find interesting is that maybe if Blind Pockets disappears and Skellige Death switch into Reckless Flurry, maybe Anna Henrietta is more playable again, because I feel like one of the core issues for that card was that these two particular leaders, Blaze of Glory and Blind Pockets, were so popular and they sucked so hard, right, for that type of deck.
Yeah,
what I would like to add to that is that another reason why I don't play Anna is because of Joachim. Because as bad as it feels to play Joachim and want to pull Usurper, then pulling Anna is even worse, because it means that you overwrite your own leader, with something that's potentially much worse. So maybe you decide to say, I cut Joachim now because, well, he's not an aristocrat anymore, and then I agree, then you can start running Anna again.
So,
what did you play in Imposter deck? Because of Skellige Rising, and then you get Final Say, get the Utah, play Vincent on it also.
Yeah. I mean, so what I will say is I think Ball will see play because it's Ball, and Ball is just absolutely broken, and people love Nilfgaard. So all those things mean Ball will see play. The question is how good it is when it does see play. Vincent it's such a sad story. Vincent came into the meta and he was kicking ass and taking names, and then they decided to nerf him, and then people still complained, so they nerfed him again, and now he's just like a 3-point fang, and it's kind of sad, right? That doesn't even proc a lot of the time because you don't have any statuses, and he's just a sad guy.
There you go.
He's like your best top end aristocrat, which is bad. But like you said, you can run hunters, you can run the other things. I could see people playing like a more spy heavy package because there's a couple of spy engines that you could run that maybe proc it. So I think it's going to be reasonably popular, at least at some point. But I don't think it's going to be particularly good. Having said that, I think it's going to be like C tier most likely. But it wouldn't surprise. I'm going to say C tier, but it wouldn't surprise me if somebody comes up with some new Chinese meta breaker or Danish breaker or whatever, and it ends up being B to A tier because it's Ball and Ball's broken.
I'm just going to answer that, Chess. Like, I think we have a lot of great Danes in the community, and the likelihood of some Dane finding a good Nilfgaard deck is quite high.
Yes, I agree.
I heard of some people wanting to make a Ball deck with Sedacious Aristocrats with the Operator buff.
Yeah, okay, don't underestimate that deck. I played that deck quite a lot, and I actually felt pretty decent with
Operator.
Okay, so the thing Operator is a provisionless, but what it basically did was it was board clogging the opponent's side, and then I had the Ball package on top of that. It does have a lot of aristocrats indeed. It might not need Joachim and Roderick to pull off its abilities. The thing is that deck still runs Roderick and Joachim to clog the board of the opponent. So I'm not sure if this new anti-synergy or this new lack of synergy is gonna like hit it too hard. It might be. It does have a bunch of aristocrats, so it has the dames as well. So I'm not sure if it requires the tags on the spying units.
I know we want to wrap this up pretty quick, but the one thing I will say is that one of the issues Nilfgaard has is they can't really cut Joachim because of how good Ku is, and it's the only like super good Ku target, right? And it just feels so bad to not run Ku because that card's also just busted right now. But,
I could see it C tier at most. I would not be surprised if it was not played at all after a few people trying something out. So between C and D tier for me. But everything's possible, right? It's Nilfgaard with two poisons.
I tend to agree, like somewhere between C and D, and I mean, just said B and C, right? So maybe we should just put it in C and call it a day. Then we got Meave. So I believe we got some buffs to Swarm, right?
Yes, we did. We got poor fucking infantry, right?
Yes.
Together with a Dahlia, that's a pretty cool combo.
Yeah, you can actually go back to playing Swarm and R, right? In theory.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad that you can't do Voimir on it unless you draw the row first.
Yes. So that's true.
But
so,
I mean, you could very well just drag the row, right? Like it's Vasemia will see play in that deck. That's if you're running drag, you still just jam it, right?
yeah, so basically, like, you're getting some more swarm opportunities, but also Meave is getting a buff. So Meave used to be a little bit of a meme this past since she was introduced, basically. But now the counter will reset. So that means that in theory, if you play her turn 1 or turn 2 in a long round 3, then she will actually trigger 3 times, boosting the entire board 3 times. Obviously, the first few times it will do it, it won't be with that many units, but still quite a powerful effect. And she will also get armor every time you boost her, so she's more easier to keep boosted for her effect to actually work. Will the combination of more swarm cards and the buff to Meave make her see some play? Or is she still just kind of meh?
I think she's at least meh still.
At least meh.
Yeah, I think at least C tier. Maybe worse. I don't know.
So what I will say is I think Swarm NR will see quite a bit of experimentation because it was a fun deck. And depending on the meta, it's pretty good, right? It's something that NR doesn't really have is a Swarm option. So bringing that back with the PFI for Adalia is a big thing. Whether Meave or not sees play in that deck is also questionable, right? Like it's going to be tight in provisions. You're probably going to want to run Drag because Drag is basically NR's scenario. Like it is it's like super. It's like their game-winning card, right? And it doesn't have a deck to fit in right now. But having said all that, I would probably err on the side of caution and put it in C for now. But I could see it being better than that. Like it wouldn't surprise me if it becomes reasonably popular. It's hard to tell without actually having it in my hands, testing it, and building the deck. So
I tend to agree with the notion that Meave might not be played in that deck, but that type of deck with Swarm might end up being better than I'm giving it credit now. So I still put the little Meave icon there in C tier with like some hopefulness that maybe there's something coming out of it, with or without it.
I think that's reasonable. Then we have Vasemia for NR Witchers. This is a deck that used to be very popular a few seasons ago, and then got a few nerfs, didn't really see much play this season. But some people got decent scores with it after all, although I think that NR is probably still like the weakest faction. Like we don't really have that many NR decks. This patch at least. Now we're getting full test as well, which is interesting. Will this be a deck you'll ever play instead of some Meave Swarm or NR Commandos?
I think Witches is reasonable right now. Some people are playing it. It's like doing okay-ish. But I don't think it's anything to like be super crazy. I mean, it's probably going to be like I don't think it's getting any better or any worse, right? So it's probably just going to be like a C tier deck. It's definitely better than D tier. You could make an argument. Actually, if Lippy's in B, it has to be B because it's definitely better than Lippy. 100% it's better than Lippy. So like all like taking it and being serious here, like if we're putting Lippy in B, then I guess it has to go B because it is probably better than all those C tier decks that we've got as well. So I could see it just being a B tier deck and whatever.
Okay, can we agree with B tier?
Yep.
Sure.
All right, I'll put it right next to Lippy. Then we got Vi, and I think we all agree this is just an easy D tier, and then we can just move on. No, okay. So, Chess, I know this is one of your favorite. It is your favorite deck. Let's not fool around. And I mean, you played this a lot, right? And I think you actually did pretty decent with it, even though you're running a very weird version with Diamond and such. But let's not get into that right now. I mean, you probably think that Vi is already S tier, right? Do you also think Vi will be S tier next patch?
So I actually think Vi is the most underrated deck right now. I'm trying to convince people, but they don't seem to hear it. But yeah, like I'm having really good success with it. And looking at the meta, like Ball's going out, which is by far its worst matchup. Even my version, like, is still pretty like. I think Ball is reasonably tough. One thing I will say, we haven't touched on it yet, but Cloggers is coming in, which is such a stupid matchup because if you draw a bunch of tutors round one, you probably win because you have enough eyes and it's really hard for Cloggers to beat you. But if you don't draw them, then you just lose because you don't play any Vies and you get absolutely smashed. So it's like pretty polarized, that matchup. Outside of that, though, all the top decks on this thing look pretty good. Like Kelly is actually it's funny because even without my version, it's only probably 60% favored for Kelly, which it is favored for Kelly. And it is tough, but like the version I'm running right now is okay into it. But outside of that, like the other 3 decks are all like super free for Vi.
Against traps?
Yeah, Trap's not super free, but I think like it's a lot better than people think. I have a very decent win rate into it. It does depend on the version. If it's the Scorch version, it's a lot worse.
Mhm.
And you can definitely make traps to be very, very good in Vi if you want it. But a lot of people, like Hattori seems to be going a bit, like obviously if it's a full in trap deck, then Hattori will see play, but there's a lot of people just running elves with a small package right now, and that's really good for Vi. Like that's pretty free. The more all in it goes, the harder it gets for Vi. But outside of that, the other decks seem pretty okay. I'm not going to convince anyone here that it's S tier, but I think it's like better than all the B tiers considerably. So I would put it in A at least.
So we have 3 A tier monster decks.
Mm-hmm.
Vi.
Okay.
So I guess I'm not going to argue against Chezz here. He knows his V deck. I think my experiences would rather put it into B tier, but I can see how when Nilfgaard leaves the meta, if that happens, that it could move up.
Like, also, Syndicate was trying to kill all the consumes.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Syndicate I find to be like a pretty close matchup. I generally seem to do okay, like win a lot of games, but a lot of these Syndicate players aren't playing it correctly. When you play against somebody who plays it correctly, it's pretty 50-50, I think, or at least maybe slightly favored for Vi, but it's tough. It is reasonably tough. But that's dropping it as well.
I would say A minus, but maybe B plus.
I agree with Chezz.
Like, I just think it's better than all these B tier
I
decks.
also like V.
You would say S tier.
A tier.
Okay.
Not B.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Okay.
I want to hear what Saber's thought is, because I know he really doesn't like Vi.
I mean, I what I would say is that I think Monsters is kind of in a beautiful spot, like having 3 very strong decks and an ancient fucklet. And Deadlife, true. No, I actually think like Monsters is like right now got so many different archetypes you can play, and like they do completely different things, like being able to play Kelly, but it's completely no unit, going AQ, which is like as many units as possible, and then Vibe, which is just kind of degenerate. But it's like it's a lot of different options, and I'm not gonna start this argument now because then the video is gonna be another hour, so I'm just gonna put it A tier and call it here.
Perfect.
And it's almost symmetrical as well, right? We just need another S tier deck, and then we're good to go.
Yep.
So
yeah, I don't think we're gonna find one of them. So,
so Cloggers. I don't think Cloggers is getting any buffs. Is that correct?
That depends on.
Yeah, I mean, you don't believe it.
Like, I'm playing Nova. Decks obviously 9 provisions and less, and Stefan Skellen is getting a provision buff, the 9 provision, and there's always this 9 provision card in my deck that's always flexible. I've tried Yen, I've tried even Hengate's Sword and Esco.
Wait,
so
you played Yen in Cloggers?
Yeah.
Originally, then I took it.
Energix's original version.
Yeah. So then I took it out and swapped it around.
Alright, so I would say with the Esco version, I made it to 2.6 with that deck. And I know if you were to look at my score, you see it's like a bajillion games, but most of the bajillion games are actually with the meta breaker that I just couldn't warm up to. So the Cloggers version I played actually had a really good win rate. And I guess some people rather want to live in a universe like this where most people don't play Cloggers because they think it's bad. Personally, I think it's underrated. You just have to play extremely aggressively. And in a matchup where they have a lot of answers, you just go all in Clog, and then you have a pretty decent chance you still win. It's like it's not gonna get any worse. And Syndicate and Nilfgaard, both of these matchups were definitely by far the worst day-to-day matchups. Of course, Mill is like impossible to win, and Kelly is pretty tough. I guess Kelly remains, and shoot. Okay, so you have Kelly and Traps that are gonna be popular, right? So maybe it's not going to make the big breakthrough, but I don't think it's going to get much worse either. It depends on how significantly more traps are going to end up being played. I would say it's at the very least B tier. I could see it in A tier, even if you the fewer people play the deck, the better of a time you're gonna have with it, because people just also tend to misplay against it a little bit.
I was just about to say, I think one of the things Cloggers benefits from, right, is people, one, not knowing it's Cloggers, because like you assume it's going to be meta breaker, and two, misplaying.
The version we were playing was the what is it called? Imprisonment.
Yeah, but a lot of people were playing Tailbot's Imprisonment, right? So
I guess.
I don't see it being played in like qualifiers and in tournaments and stuff.
Oh yeah,
it's know what to play against.
I guess it depends. On Reddit can still be really annoying, even if you know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So we think it's better than Ball, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's also better than Cleaver. If this is not B tier, I don't know. You guys are like crazy.
I definitely think it's at least B tier.
Yeah.
Okay, but we don't think it's A tier, right?
No, I don't.
In the hands of a veteran Cloggers player, I think it is. But you would probably have to know exactly how to play each matchup, and it's not that easy to actually.
The problem with Cloggers is once the play rate goes up, one, people start taking for it, and two, people start playing better against it, and that's going to be, if it's the only viable Nilfgaard deck next season, it's going to struggle from that. However, it's going to see an insane amount if it is the only viable NG deck, because NG always has the highest play rate, which is really annoying.
So is B tier crazy? Can we all live with that?
Yes, B.
B.
Okay.
B+.
Fine. We can put it here.
No.
Then finally, we have a bit of a weird one, because this is Redeye, and obviously Redeye could be any deck, but Redeye is one of the cards that indirectly got the most buffs, actually, because all the stratagems got buffed, at least a lot of them did. So like Redeye can now be played in a bunch of different decks. Like you can use a back row for a guaranteed, well, obviously you need to find the poison, but then you have like a poison you can use to choose in combination with another poison card from your hand. If you're playing in the Skellige, you get like a discard and 4 points. If you use it in what other factions that get buffs here?
Syndicate coins.
Syndicate for coins or monsters, you can use it in Death Wish units. So like Redeye got like a bunch of buffs. But also it was a card that didn't see any play before this patch. So will we see any Redeye decks? Like, will there be any good Redeye decks next season?
Next.
It's the last one, Chess.
No. Wrap it up.
So I think Redeye monsters, Redeye elves are probably the two most interesting ones. Redeye elves had been a thing in the past. If you go like all the way Swarm with it, I wouldn't put it past it being somewhat okay. And I think Redeye monsters is probably the most interesting, because the Urn rework is, or the tweak to it is probably opening up the most new plays that we hadn't seen before in round 3 with that combo. It can suggest like Redeye round 3 on like a Maruna. That's a lot of points, right? And it's like there's this threat that's hovering on the board that can go off at any time. I think it's like something that people will play around with. I feel like it's extremely difficult to anticipate where exactly he's going to land. Maybe we like could put it C tier, but I mean, I think there could be a better Redeye deck than a Ball deck or like a Meave deck.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think C tier is quite reasonable. I think we're probably going to see some sort of deck that will play Redeye that's going to be decent, but it's also not going to be much more than that.
Okay, if you want, like, if I'm going to take it seriously, then essentially, right, all the things that got buffed in Redeye are all the front row Redeye options, right? It's all the faction specific ones. And if we go through each faction, the chances of them playing Redeye, like Syndicate's never going to play Redeye. It just like it's too, like it just doesn't want to play singletons, right?
It's not all the faction
and also it's like a really awkward stratagem to use in Syndicate, like from Redeye. It's fine on blue coin if you're playing like a what's it called deck, a passive flora deck, but you're not going to want to play Redeye in a passive flora deck, for example. If you then go to like Skellige, it works in like something like Lippy or a discard deck, but the problem with that is in those sort of decks you want to be playing Ceres, so you can't play it. Then you go to monsters, and sure, like it makes some sense in monsters, and I could see it being good in monsters, but the problem is monsters already has 3 A tier decks, so that's kind of tough. Northern Realms, I think, did they buff that stratagem? It's just like no, so like that one like is probably the most like likely one to fit it in. But like there's no reason to run it in that because they didn't buff that stratagem or anything. And then the only one I could see it seeing playing is ST because elves like all their bronzes are garbage, right? So you kind of it's fine to run it in that, and people already do it. So I could see it being played in ST. And if you play it in ST, then it's probably better than all the C tier decks because elves is pretty strong. You just jam a couple of traps, happy to run one off, crushing trap, that sort of thing. So I could see a Redeye ST deck being actually pretty decent. The question is would it be better than a standard one? Probably not. But if you want me to take it seriously, then I guess B tier for Redeye traps is probably fine. Like a Redeye traps deck will be pretty good if you play that, I think.
Okay.
Also, don't forget SK double iced Redeye in round 3, where you can trigger him immediately.
True.
Nah, it's a meme. Yeah, but I agree with Jesse.
So should we put it in B tier?
I think that part I feel like it's very
C.
I think C tier. Like maybe a couple of C tier with an option for B tier if
Better than Cleaver.
the dice fall that way. I think so, yeah. I think
like an elf deck will like if you play it in elves, it will be, but it's not because of Redeye, right? Like you're just playing it as a Redeye vision for whatever reason, right? But
so if we leave it at this, is this something we can be happy with? Do we think this is looking okay, or is it something that looks completely off?
Lippy needs to go to the left.
Okay.
I'm pretty happy with this.
I'm not ahead of Ruckus, though.
No, I think
honestly,
Lippy left to Faltist. Then it's fine.
the funny thing is that I'm pretty happy with this. I could see I could definitely see Ice not being S tier, and just being another A tier deck. Like it sort of depends, right? Like there's going to be some popular S tier deck, but some deck. But
I do tend to agree. Like looking at this right now, like the tree, like it's good against AQ, right? But it's bad against Trap. It's bad against Kelly. It's bad against Slide, right? It's like it's kind of hard to justify the S tier rating right now.
Yeah,
so
are we gonna see a Traps V meta with like a bit of?
I don't think that Vi is going to be popular particularly unless people like. It just hasn't been popular since the nerf, right?
I mean, with Gloggers up there as well, this could be one of the most degenerate metas we've ever had.
So should we actually put Ice down to A tier?
Sure.
I think.
I mean, it's up to you guys. You guys put it in S. I said A, but
J&A. Crozyr.
I would almost rather put like the Ruckus Queen down to B tier again. I don't know.
That was not the question. Yay or nay? Ice to A tier.
I was also leaning towards A, and then you were like, if it's.
I think Reckless Flurry is still.
I think Saber push for ST, yeah.
I think Reckless Flurry. I'm actually more thinking of like a more full control deck, and then it's gonna be pretty good against V and Kelly.
Okay.
So that's what I'm believing. That's why.
You know what, guys? We will leave it here. We will say that it's S tier. It's also good content that we have a deck in all categories. Otherwise, it looks pretty stupid. So let's leave it at this.
Vi rank with it, and then we're good. Put Vi.
That's gonna be controversial.
People in the comments argue if it's A or S.
Yeah.
Tell us in the comments what you guys think.
And tell me why you think Vi is the best deck.
Right. So thanks for watching, guys, and thanks for joining, Crozyr, Chezz, and Jess. It was a pleasure having you, and see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye.